Chapter 8. Continuing the war on low self-worth, the actions. Mantra: I treat myself with respect. Words without actions are, well, just words really. Words can be helpful, but without actions to back them up, they start to lose their power. You can stand in the mirror and repeat loving mantras to yourself over and over. It might challenge your thinking for a while, but unless you begin treating yourself accordingly, those phrases will soon become water off a duck's back. I could tell my kids I love them 100 times per day, but unless I'm treating them with care and respect, my words will soon mean very little indeed. They will feel like empty statements. Actions don't just back up words, they speak louder than them. Whilst I love you is very nice to hear, if we treat someone with love, they'll feel loved regardless of how many times we say it. Often, we experience a double whammy. Our internal dialogue is critical, and without realizing it, our actions towards ourselves amplify and compound its criticisms, making them even more powerful. So now you've started to take steps to address your internal dialogue, it's important that you also take steps to start changing the way you behave towards yourself. Self-care is often seen as being a bit cheesy, so we're going to de-cheese self-care in this chapter. We'll look at exactly what it is, what it isn't, how it fits into the bigger picture of how we treat ourselves, and why addressing it is a vital part of working on self-esteem. You are worthy of having your feelings validated and your needs met, but first you need to know what these are. This chapter will also explain how to climb off the exhausting burnout roller coaster that low self-worth has us firmly sat upon. You deserve rest, and I'm going to have you daring to believe it. Reframing self-care. I didn't really want to mention self-care at first because I know the phrase initiates the odd eye roll. It conjures up saccharine images of having a nice long bath while wearing a face mask or taking a spa break. Many of us have begun to label the cornerstones of mental health, such as rest, hydration, and good nutrition, as self-care. We've turned what should be non-negotiables into indulgent optional treatments. However, the more I think about self-care, talk about it, and write about it, the more my understanding about what exactly self-care is changes. I'm going to break self-care down further in this chapter so we can start to think about it in a different way. Instead of looking at self-care as a catch-all term, we're going to explore it as part of the bigger picture around the way you treat yourself and look at self-preservation, self-respect, self-care, and self-love. Self-preservation. Head down and carry on. Everyone sees me as super busy, juggling work, the dogs, and the foster kids. Nobody would believe I have these times where I just cry and feel horrendous. Then I pick myself back up and get back out there. Anonymous. To me, self-preservation is that basic state in which we focus on preserving our own existence. Self-preservation is those moments in life when you've been faced with a challenge and have powered on through. Perhaps you needed to ignore physical exhaustion so that you could care for a sick relative. Maybe you had to put aside your own fear so that you could comfort someone younger and more vulnerable than yourself. We hear stories of people finding apparently superhuman strength to lift cars off people and to act in ways and at speeds they'd never usually be able to in moments of challenge or trauma, which draw on the same sort of energy. The thing is that while our self-preservation response is there to keep us safe and alive, it should never be a physical state in which we have to live for extended periods of time. Yet many people do. I, for one, have spent lots of time in a heightened state designed to preserve my life, not be my life. I have felt constantly on edge with my emotions just below the surface. It seemed like I was fine, but I wasn't thriving. I was surviving. When people ask me how I managed during one of the hardest times of my life, I say I had no choice. I wasn't living. I was moving through life like a machine, not engaging, laughing, loving, or living, just doing and going through the necessary motions. You too might find yourself on a roller coaster of stress and burnout, living in a way that has you functioning at a stressed or anxious level. If you ignore the warning signs, the little red flags that say, hey, I need a rest, please slow down, then you too may experience your own sort of emotional meltdown. This is very common for those whose self-esteem is attached to the principle of do, do, do. When you're living in such a heightened state of self-preservation, you're likely doing the bare minimum when it comes to really caring for yourself. You may be meeting your basic needs just enough to keep carrying on. Your feelings are likely to be pushed aside to allow you to focus on the task at hand, which consumes all your reserves and leaves you scraping the bottom of the energy barrel. You may find you have little energy for fun, being present, being excited or happy, for laughter and relaxation. You might feel irritable and anxious as your whirling thoughts demand energy that you don't quite have available right now. You may also find it harder to sleep even though you're exhausted, because when you slow down for bedtime, your feelings and fears rush to the forefront of your mind, making it harder for you to switch off. There is little regard for your own needs, feelings, opinions, and passions, because your focus is on facilitating those of the people around you or just making it through each day. Self-respect. Barb said, when I realized I'd gotten into the habit of not drinking a drop of water until the evening, I knew something had to change. Let's unpick the idea of self-respect a little bit, because many of us aren't actually giving it to ourselves. Respect is the way most of us would treat a stranger, acknowledging them as a fellow human being of value. You wouldn't necessarily roll out the red carpet for them, but you'd respect their need for space, and you wouldn't ignore them if they wound the window of the car down to ask for directions. What would that stranger think you thought of them if you treated them in the way you treat yourself? Self-respect is so important in order to lift our low self-esteem to a healthier place. When you respect yourself as an individual, a human with needs, wants, flaws, and limitations, it impacts the decisions you make, how you use your resources, and where you place your boundaries. Self-respect asks you to value your own needs, to take up your space in the world, for you are as deserving of space, physically and verbally, as anyone else. Consider your basic needs: food, water, warmth, safety, purpose, creativity, human connection, and relationships are the main ones. These things are not about self-care. They are self-respect. They are not about rolling out the red carpet, but about acknowledging your humanity. Here are some simple acts of self-respect: washing, taking prescribed medication, going to bed at a sensible time, brushing your teeth, using the toilet when you need to, wearing warm clothes when it's cold, eating nourishing food when you are hungry, drinking enough water, asking for support when you need it, asserting a boundary in a relationship, verbalizing your needs. These acts represent the cornerstones of good mental health. They are priorities, the fundamental building blocks upon which your day should be based. Oh, the number of times I've needed a wee and then spent ages hopping desperately around the kitchen when the loo was in eyeshot. Instead, I've prioritised unloading the dishwasher, grabbing yet another snack for a hungry toddler, or answering an email. Going to the loo when I need a wee doesn't need to be seen as an act of self-care, but of self-respect. Self-respect is about going to bed at a time that acknowledges your need for rest and your current energy levels. Whereas self-care is going to bed early, lighting a candle, picking up a book. Self-respect encourages you to take responsibility for your own behaviour and choices and their repercussions. When a decision is made out of a place of self-respect and healthy boundaries, our self-respect encourages us to hold our hands up if things do go awry, feel the disappointment and move on. When you respect yourself in a positive way, you'll naturally invite respect from those around you too. When you don't respect yourself, you are dehumanizing yourself. You are telling yourself that you are unique in your lack of worth. Everyone has the same value, yet somehow you believe you are the one that slipped through the net. You are not the exception to the rule that all human beings are worthy of respect and having their basic needs met. You are not the one whose flaws are unforgivable, whose failings make you unlovable. When we say we are not worthy of respecting our own needs, boundaries, and emotions, we are rejecting a fundamental fact that everybody is worthy of these things. You are just as worthy as anyone else. Sure, it may not feel true, but it is true. Feelings aren't facts. Facts are facts. You're worthy of respect from others, from yourself. Fact. Self-care. Zena says, I work for my dad and he lets me come in a bit late one morning a week so I get to the pool early. He sees how happy it makes me and I'm way happier in the office because of it. Now, if meeting your basic needs is actually about self-respect and self-preservation, then self-care is the next step. It's kindness. It's the gift you give yourself and an acknowledgement of your worth. Sure, I can meet the basic needs of a guest who comes to stay. I can ensure that she is fed and watered and has somewhere safe to sleep. That is about respect. While care manifests itself in the rolled towel on the bed and the water on the bedside table, it's the offer of breakfast in the morning and the purchase of some juice and croissants because I know she will like them. I've stepped it up from the minimum required and made extra effort. How is my guest likely to feel? Touched, appreciated, wanted. If self-respect is the shower, self-care is the long bath with the book. Self-care builds self-esteem, which is the lens through which we view our immovable worth. So be sure to meet your basic needs and then go beyond them, because there will be other things that you know are important for your personal well-being beyond being fed and watered. These are the things that acknowledge your individuality and which make you feel happy and fulfilled. They energize you in some way and make you feel alive. For me, self-care is about going out for walks in the woodland with a friend, chatting on the sofa with a glass of wine in hand, or wandering through a small town that I've never visited before. It's having a bath with a face mask and properly drying my hair afterwards. It's running through fields instead of doing a perfunctory 15 minutes of jumping around indoors in the name of exercise. Those things are extras, and they make me feel good. They refuel me more than a glass of water at an early bedtime. They give me a spring in my step and a sparkle in my eye. That is self-care to me. How much of this kind of self-treatment do you engage in, and how does that stack up to the amount of time and energy you spend encouraging this kind of feeling for others? self-love. Krista says, sometimes I can confidently say I love myself, not in a big-headed way. Self-love is a term that gets batted around quite a lot, especially on social media. I don't want you to put pressure on yourself to aim for this right now. As we know full well, love isn't something we can force. It's something that grows over time when nurtured. Do I love myself? Sometimes, maybe. I'm moving towards that, which is a far cry from the self-hatred I used to feel almost constantly. When I think about love and the love I feel for my family, whilst the love is constant, the feelings fluctuate. Sometimes my husband is annoying. Sometimes I'm not nice to be around. And sometimes it feels like my kids are on a mission to push me beyond my limits. And yet I know I love them. Love isn't a simple or straightforward feeling. Love is sometimes a decision to act lovingly, even though you don't feel loving. That's how relationships work. Otherwise, we'd bail out as soon as that starry-eyed feeling softens and recedes. I don't feel that starry-eyed towards myself, but the more compassion I find for myself when needed, and the kinder I am towards myself, the more this nurtures that loving acceptance of myself. Know your needs. Manuela says, honestly, I don't even know what I need. If you are going to begin to meet your own needs more often, it's important you know what they are. Here, I'm talking your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual needs, all your needs. I ask pretty much all my clients a deceptively simple question. Tell me 3 things you need. This is almost always followed by a contemplative pause. Sometimes tears come as they try to formulate a response. The tears acknowledge quite how hard it is to consider their own needs. You may have overlooked your own needs for so long that you don't even know what they are anymore. Perhaps you've brushed them under the carpet, beaten them down with the gratitude stick, compared them away, or diminished them. Maybe your focus is often on the needs of others instead. My own mind is a constant buzz of monitoring the needs of those around me, especially my kids. Are they thirsty? Do they need a snack, a nap, a break? Am I good enough for them? But even before kids, my mind would still be buzzing all the time with similar thoughts. Am I annoying my colleague? Am I being too loud, too quiet, too much, or not enough? Do I need to make them another drink? Are they bored? Shall I offer to help? Am I taking up too much space on this train seat? Am I a burden on that friend? This is because, and it may be the same for you too, my understanding of how acceptable I was tightly intertwined with how useful I believed I was in the world. To be able to meet your needs, you need to know what they are. Ask yourself, as you would a friend or child, can I help you? What do you need? Sometimes you have to take this question outside of yourself somehow, and asking yourself a direct question can get you thinking in a slightly different way. Try on feelings and emotions like clothes and see what fits. Sometimes when I'm not sure how I feel or what I need, I make a mental list of my possible emotions or needs. Am I angry, hurt, tired, overwhelmed, stressed, sad? Do I need support, space, company, lunch? One of these might jump out to me. As you become more attentive and gentle towards yourself, you will find it easier to recognize what needs and feelings have arisen for you, and then you can try to meet them. Parent yourself. Sometimes I feel like I'm being my own parent, and this can be an incredibly helpful tactic, because this is really what we need to do at times. None of us is one-dimensional. There is a part of us that wants to take the easy route, whatever that may be. It's the same part of me which this morning had me arguing with my grown-up self that I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go downstairs and make breakfast. I wanted to laze and watch box sets in my pajamas. But my grown-up self acknowledged my tiredness whilst reminding me of my responsibilities. She ushered me out of bed and downstairs. However old we are, we all have this younger, hidden part of ourselves, our inner child. If we have been parented in an ideal way, we can also shape our upbringing into an inner parent and use its kind, firm, yet loving voice to coax our inner child in the right direction. If you didn't have that sort of parenting, you will need to create your inner parent by yourself. This inner adult can encourage you to take steps that will increase your self-esteem. Occasionally, when my self-worth is low, my inner child will kick up a storm in a similar way to how my kids sometimes behave, with black and white feelings and thoughts that lack rationality and clarity. What's the point? Nobody gets me. I'm no good. I'm a failure. I'm unlovable. My inner parent will remind me that those are just my thoughts. Thoughts aren't facts. I'm liked by those important to me and worthy of being treated with respect. My thoughts can change my behavior. If I feel like a bad person, my inner child will argue. Why get up and do a workout that I know will make me feel good? If I feel bad about myself, I'm less motivated to do the things that are good for me. That's when my inner parent steps in. Come on, Anna. I know you feel rubbish, but we also know that getting outside really helps you when you feel like this. You're worthy of feeling good. This is how closely entangled your inner dialogue and your behavior are. Addressing one helps you to address the other. Don't wait until you feel worthy. Frankie says, I used to do dance as a teenager and loved it. I always said I'd do it again as it gave me so much enjoyment, but I kept putting it off for when I'd have more time. A friend asked me to go with her. It made me feel so good. I wish I hadn't waited so long. One whacking great, enormous brick wall that often blocks us from treating ourselves with respect is that it's tempting to wait until we feel like we're worth it before we begin to implement nurturing habits. The truth is that if I'd waited until I felt worthy of good things before I sought them out or accepted them into my life, I'd still be waiting. This is partly because my thoughts and feelings fluctuate like the British summer weather, but also because my actions change my self-esteem as much as my self-esteem changes my actions. If I waited until I felt worthy of treating myself kindly, I could be waiting forever. I went to a wedding once, and the lady leading the sermon said something that has stayed with me all these years later. Love isn't always a feeling, it's a decision. She was, of course, telling the newlyweds that they may not always feel that starry-eyed, loved-up feeling because that changes. Love is a choice, a decision. I can be annoyed with my husband, yet still choose to do the loving thing of talking it out, offering an olive branch, forgiving or apologizing. This feels very relevant when talking about self-worth, just like love is a decision. Treating yourself as someone of worth in order to grow your self-esteem is a decision that needs to override any fluctuating emotions. I've realized recently that when I'm tired or hormonal, I somehow feel worth less. My inner critic leaps loudly into action and my behavior follows suit. It takes energy to coach myself out of that loop, but it's a decision. Sometimes the best decisions involve doing the things we least want to do when we least want to do them. I doubt every Olympic athlete rolls out of bed at unearthly hours on dark winter mornings wanting to rush out and go training. If they waited until they felt like an athlete in order to act like one, it would never happen. It's the bigger picture thinking that drives them. The growth, the building of strength and stamina, muscle fiber by muscle fiber, ice bath by ice bath, day by day, session by session. That medal isn't just a celebration of a time beaten, but of those thousands of decisions made over feelings. It's about the legs swung out of a bed into track shoes when the feelings say stay. Your self-esteem will grow each time you choose self-respect over criticism, kindness over cruelty, compassion over shame. Comparison. I tell myself to look on the bright side. I feel guilty when I feel low because others have it harder than me. Anonymous. Emotional comparison has been such a big issue for me, and now that I've recognized how freely I compare my emotions, I notice it all the time in others too. I wrote this audiobook amidst a global pandemic where everyone was adrift on the same sea, facing a global storm of uncertainty but sitting in very different boats. Undoubtedly, some of us had it harder, sadder, and scarier than others. Some people lost loved ones, and some spent eye-wateringly long shifts on the medical front line sweating behind gowns and masks. Some lost jobs, incomes, everything normal. Some, like me, spent weeks cooped up, safely at home with a garden and a regular online shopping delivery, yet I still experienced overwhelm, fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. How dare I feel these emotions? I was not mourning. I was not on the medical front line. I was not alone. I was not desperately trying to work out how on earth to feed our family. Feelings are feelings. End of story. If you feel them, they are real to you. And if they are real, they have value. You don't need to dissect them, analyze them, or swim around in them. You don't need to compare them, shame them, shut them down, or diminish them. Just acknowledge the feeling. Let it be, and it will move through you. If you use other people's circumstances to guilt trip yourself out of a feeling, you shove your emotion behind a wall. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go away. It just gets hidden. Feelings are waves. They come and go, ebb and flow, rise and fall, all on their own. You don't need to mess with the process by beating yourself over the head with a positivity stick every time you feel a feeling you don't want to feel. I shouldn't feel sad because so-and-so has it worse than me. Someone else will always have it better or worse than you, always. That feeling is there regardless of whether you want to feel it or not, or how appropriate you believe it to be. Let it be, and it will move. I don't know about you, but for a long time I grouped emotions into good and bad. Like some kind of distorted emotional diet. Good emotions include happiness, gratitude, forgiveness, love, patience, and kindness, while the bad ones were anger, sadness, hurt, resentment, frustration, and irritation. I could have as much as I liked of the good emotions, but should try to skimp on the bad ones. And if I binged on bad emotions, I would feel guilt and shame. Now, as with food choices, you know that the healthiest way to live is to allow nothing to get out of bounds, but to seek balance and enjoy the variety of tastes and textures. It's the same with emotion. A bit of everything is more than acceptable. It's sustainable, human, and healthy. Someone else's sadness doesn't make your sadness any less sad either. Sadness is sadness. If you want to acknowledge someone else's circumstances, allow them to inspire a sense of gratitude. Your emotions aren't everything. They won't even always make much sense, but they are your emotions. And devaluing, shaming, and invalidating them means devaluing, shaming, and invalidating yourself. Accepting who you are means accepting all that you are, even if you'd like to address, grow, strengthen, or change some of it. Stepping off the burnout roller coaster. Tara said, "One day I said, I can't, and they were still my friend. That was when I started acknowledging that I couldn't do it all and be happy." You are not what you do. If you live as if your value is the sum of how much you do and give out, you will win a ticket to the burnout roller coaster. This is not a sustainable way to live, because constantly giving out completely ignores your human nature. The fact that you have limited resources and that you need to be nurtured, refueled, and supported too. For me, this sort of overwhelm often looks like a full diary with a lot of yeses and a smiling, sociable face, and then, depleted and behind closed doors, I become low, irritable, resentful, and self-critical, and I want to retreat. Everyone gets the best of me, apart from me, although my family don't really enjoy my burnt-out, resentful self either. This resentment is toxic. It's a sign that I've agreed to take on more than I have the resources to fulfill, and that I haven't restocked my resources enough. It can leave me feeling hurt by those who've actually done little more than ask something of me. They don't know my bigger picture. They can't see my diary, my energy levels, my limits. Only I can. Therefore, it's my responsibility to put those boundaries in place. I once had a colleague who, when asked if he could help out at an evening event, would give a simple answer, a yes or a no. Neither reply came with any explanations or apologies. It would often rile me when his no came without an, "I'm so sorry, I'd love to, I feel really bad that I can't." But if I really think about it, my irritation came tinged with envy. I was jealous that he didn't feel the need to justify himself. His no could have been because he had an important appointment that evening, or simply because he needed a night at home on the sofa with his partner. Yet, while sometimes inconvenient, I admired his confident no. I'd be the person saying yes, despite my circumstances, and then feeling resentful because nobody knew how much it was costing me. Nobody knows how much your yeses cost, apart from you. Before you agree to something, pause and think of the bigger picture in your diary and resources. Say, "Let me get back to you," so that you're not tempted to respond off the back of your historic belief that your worth is the sum of what you do. The more I've begun to respect my boundaries, the fewer, less ugly, and less lengthy my burnt-out, overwhelmed moments have become. To be able to step off the burnout roller coaster, it's helpful to do a speedy assessment of the cost of each yes before the word actually escapes your lips. Here are some tips you might find helpful. Know your load and your limit. The further you drive in a car, the more fuel you need, right? In fact, you need a little extra, just in case you have to make a detour, go off-piste to find a toilet, or you get lost. You need to allow for contingency. Once, we set out on the motorway with our fuel tank in the red. The warning light glared at us, yet we were in a rush, so we decided to stop at the first service station to refill en route. The problem was that the service station never appeared, or at least not soon enough. We drove down the slow lane on a wing and a prayer, knowing that every mile we covered was just luck, and soon that luck would run out. The accelerator became spongy, and we veered off to the safety of the hard shoulder. After hours of waiting for a tow truck, we climbed aboard the lorry, awkwardly saying to the driver, "Oh dear, this must happen all the time." His response, "Not as much as you'd think," had us sinking into the plastic seating even further. So often, this is how I live my life. I hover around the red zone of my resources, winging it. I know I'm low on energy, time, and zest for life, yet I keep powering on regardless. This is not a kind way to live. It's not a nice way to live, and it keeps you wedged firmly in your seat of the burnout roller coaster. You either schedule in fuel stops or you grind to a messy, inconvenient halt. I like to think that self-respect is all about keeping a healthy contingency space between your load and your limit. Your load. Your load is made up of everything you are responsible for and everything that demands your energy, be it physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental. Your load is forever changing depending on how many yeses you dish out and how busy your life is. Your limit. Your limit is the sum of the resources you have available to use. This is also constantly changing. Your resources are impacted by how well you've slept, what support you have, whether you've eaten, how self-nurturing your behavior is, and what meaningful relationships you've drawn from recently. Your contingency. Your contingency is the extra bit of fuel in your tank. It's your reserve, should you need it. It's the energy you draw upon when one of life's curveballs knocks you, or you catch a cold, or are needed for a few extra hours in the office after a busy day. You need this contingency so that these curveballs don't find you utterly flawed and empty, scraping from the bottom of an already empty barrel. If your friend was unwell, would you push them to party? Probably not, because you'd respect that their resources were low. You'd recognize that they were having to use their reserves of energy simply to maintain the doggy paddle of life. In the same way, continually pushing yourself beyond the limits of your energy is not respectful. It's unkind, maybe even cruel sometimes. And what message are you giving yourself? That you are not worthy of rest or recovery? That your human limitations aren't good enough? You may have become so used to living in the red zone that it feels alien and awkward for you to refuel. Have you ever felt a wave of guilt when you've stopped, slowed down, booked a holiday, put your out of office on, taken a sick day, paused, put your feet up, or said no? If so, then you've got used to living at the very limit of your resources. It's time to change things up for the sake of your mental health and self-esteem. You are worthy of rest. You are more than what you do. End of story. But not the end of the audiobook. Rest as recovery. Patty said, for years I stayed up past midnight getting stuff done, and then I got the flu. It got me into the habit of going to bed earlier, and I couldn't believe it. I always thought I was an irritable person, but I became so much calmer. Rest basically changed my personality. Sure, I don't get as much done, but I'm nicer to be around. For so long, I viewed rest as an indulgence, a worthless and unproductive waste of time. And then one day, I started seeing it as a kind of recovery. Rest offers recovery from getting caught up in a fast-paced life, from giving and doing. It's not indulgence, it's science. When we give, we need to replace, or we'll end up in debt. Rest is the antidote to burnout. It's the ticket out of overwhelm. You can try to cheat the system with coffee, efficiency, life hacks, and shortcuts, but nothing replaces rest. When I give without replacing, I become a big, old, exhausted vacuum. Rest is recovery, or at least you can start to see it as a recovery if that helps, until you actually begin to believe you're worthy of rest, regardless of how much or little you've spent of yourself. Because you're also worthy of rest purely for its own sake too. We need rest to give us energy, and we need energy for so much in life. Do you know what struck me recently? That when I am worn out and overwhelmed, I feel low and I don't laugh as much. Intrusive thoughts come a little thicker and faster, and I find myself overthinking. I just don't have as much joy in my life and start to question whether depression is knocking at my door. And then when I sleep or slow down, the life comes back. This is because we all need that contingency of energy and resources, not only to help us navigate the curveballs, but to be able to enjoy the things that make life good. You need energy to laugh because it allows you to push worries aside and just be in the moment. You need energy to bat away intrusive thoughts rather than let them steamroll over you. You need energy to rationalize overthinking and those irrational, fearful thoughts that threaten to take over and steal your sleep and peace. You need energy to invest in the relationships that are meaningful to you and to engage in activities that give you purpose or happiness. All of these things require energy. And if you're letting rest become deprioritized and squeezed out of your life like some sort of wasteful inconvenience, a whole lot of other stuff goes out too. How much rest you have has a lot to do with your general sense of well-being. To sum up, the way you treat yourself is an important key to believing that you are worth having your needs met, just as the way you talk to yourself in your thoughts is important too. The two need to work in tandem. Actions say so much, but we also know how powerful the spoken word is. I remember things that were said to me flippantly decades ago, so how much more impact could a drip-fed critical narrative have on my self-esteem? Therefore, address the way you speak to and treat yourself in tandem. Try to be patient with yourself in this process. It's like learning a new language or exercising an unused muscle. It can feel tiring because it requires focus and intention, but in time, you'll become stronger at speaking to and treating yourself more respectfully. Self-care and self-respect aren't selfish. They are a way of nurturing your self-esteem so that you can feel deserving of the good things and relationships in your life and believe you are worthy of seeking support when you need it. Journal points. How would someone feel if you treated them in the way you treated yourself? In what ways do you deny yourself self-respect? How do you feel when you do? What are your needs now? List 3 things. What is your attitude to rest? How might you get more of it? How much contingency do you allow between your load and your limit? How might you change that if necessary? Chapter 9. Pressing pause on people pleasing.